Hi, kids. This is Sheral again, and I'm ready with another adventure from the Bible. And I'm reading in Exodus chapter 2. Now, I want to see how many of you remember the little baby that the mama put him down in the Nile to save his life, and the princess pulled him out. Does anybody remember his name? Moses, you got it. It was Moses. So Moses was raised in the palace by the Pharaoh's daughter. And the Pharaoh was sort of like the king of the area. But Moses grew up in the palace, but he knew that he was adopted by the princess. So he knew that he was actually a Hebrew. But I'm going to skip to chapter 2, verse 11. It says, one day after Moses had grown up, he went to where his own people were, and he watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian, okay, that's what he was raised as an Egyptian, beating a Hebrew, which was one of his own people. Looking this way and that, and not seeing anyone, he killed the Egyptian. Isn't that awful? And then what he did? He hid him. He hid him in the sand. Now, the next day, he went out again to walk around among the people, and he saw a Hebrew man fighting and hitting another Hebrew man. And he says, why would you do that? Why would you be hitting him? He's your fellow Hebrew. And the man said in verse 14, who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian? Then Moses was afraid, and he thought, what if I did become known? And when Pharaoh heard about that, he wanted to kill Moses. Okay, so Moses, you know what he did? What did he do? Anybody have a guess? He took off. He ran away. He ran to Midian. Midian was another area not too far from where he was, but he ran to Midian, and there he met Jethro, and he began to work for Jethro, being a sheep herder. Okay, and then he ended up marrying Jethro's daughter, and then they ended up having a son. But God was watching him. Just like God watches you, and he has plans in your life. So let's skip to chapter 3. Moses is in the wilderness, and he's watching the sheep. All of a sudden, he sees a bush, and the bush is on fire. But it's not burning up. It's just on fire. So you know what Moses did? He walked over there to look at it. He says, I'm going to see what this strange sight is, why the bush doesn't burn up. So when the Lord had saw that Moses had went over to look at it, he called to him from outside the bush. He says, Moses.
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 Well, what do you think Moses thought? This bush is talking to me. But Moses recognized it was the voice of God. So Moses said, here I am. And God said, don't come any closer, Moses. Take off your sandals, for the ground you are standing on is holy ground. And you know what made it holy? Because God was there. Because God was speaking to Moses from outside of the bush. And then you know what God said? Verse 6, it says, then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was scared to look at God. And you know what the Lord said? He said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, to bring them up out of that land into a good and plentiful land, a land of milk and honey. Ooh, isn't that cool? And you know what the milk and honey stood for? It stood for that there was plenty to eat. There was plenty of food. It was a good, prosperous land. Well, he said it was the home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Lots of sites, wouldn't it? And now the cry of the people has reached his ears. So you know what that tells me? That God hears our cries. God hears us when we're suffering and when we're going through things, and he has a way of escape for us too. Just like God already heard the Egyptians crying, and he had a solution for it. So Moses said to God, well, what do I do? God said, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring home my people, the Israelites, to take them out of Egypt. And Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? You know what God said? God said, I will be with you. And this shall be a sign to you, that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Well, Moses still wasn't sure, okay? He said, in verse 13, Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and to them. What do I say to them? The God of your fathers has sent me to you. And what if they don't? What if they don't believe me? What if they ask what your name is? Then what shall I tell them? And verse 14, God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. And God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, he sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. So go, assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me and has sending me to Pharaoh to tell him to let my people go. Isn't that awesome? Now that's where I'm going to stop right now. But you know something? If you want to go home and read in the Bible, you can read chapter 3, 4, 5, 6. Keep on reading in Exodus and see what happened when Moses went before the Pharaoh. But what I want to ask you today is, do you think that God knew when his mama put him in the Nile River that God was going to use him one day to set his people free? He knew that, didn't he? Well, you know what? So God knows each one of you. He knows everything that he has planned for you. He knows it all. We just have to be obedient to listen to him and do what he asks us to do. So Moses was obedient, and he ended up taking the people out of Egypt and taking them to the land of milk and honey, the land of prosperity. So why don't you think about this? If God knew Moses, and God knew that his mama was going to put him in that Nile River, and God knew that the Pharaoh's daughter was going to pull him out, and God had a plan for him, don't you think God has a plan for you? I think so, because God made us each unique according to his plan for our lives. So I want everybody to say this with me. I am created by God to do good works. Amen. I will see you all later. Bye.